Hey, there we go. All right, good afternoon all. Today I'm speaking about the digitisation of historic Australian journals, how Trove makes discovery and delivery possible, and the community impact that that's having. This paper is a collaboration between myself and my colleague Dr. Hilary Berthon, who's head of the Trove outreach team. She would love to be here, but one of us had to stay home and keep Trove running, so she's back at the National Library. Now, if you take one thing away from this talk, I want it to be this graph. Before the red arrow is what usage of our digitised journals look like when you had a traditional link to each journal title in a catalogue record. After the red arrow, there was keyword searching. So usage tripled. Not new content, just more findable. So how did this happen? Doesn't want to move on? Okay. Good. Hey, there we go. So how did this happen? Well, it starts with Trove. Hopefully most of you know what Trove is. In case you haven't heard of it before, Trove is both an aggregator of metadata from Australian repositories, as well as a host of its own digital content. It's a platform for users to do research and build new tools, as well as a community of really passionate users. We're most known for items like this digitised newspaper. It's a reputation we cannot shake. So this digitised newspaper lives within the Trove platform. This is possible because of the collaborative program to mass digitise newspapers that's been running since 2006. There's a streamlined process of project management, digitisation, storage, and public discovery and delivery systems. Any member of the public can access Trove, type in their search terms, and come back with the matching articles. Whether it was the State Library of Victoria or someone small like the Bega Historical Society who helped fund the digitisation of that newspaper, all the material is findable, searchable, viewable within a single national system. So this kind of content lives within Trove, within the Trove platform. I want to stress that, it lives on Trove. But Trove's also an aggregator of content from other Australian collections. So they tend to look like this photograph. Trove only has a Dublin Gore metadata record. It describes the item, it includes a link to where the user can find that item online, and if they're lucky, it also includes a thumbnail size version. But the user gets sent off to another website to view the full size image. So this item lives outside of Trove. The newspapers live inside of Trove. So I'm going to go into more detail about the platform and host aspects of Trove, and we'll come back to the community at the end. Those newspapers live within Trove because of the National Library's now decade-honed process for mass digitising newspapers. Now last year, in 2017, the National Library completed a 5-year project, the Digital Library Infrastructure Replacement Program, which is a real mouthful, but it brought efficiencies and innovations to our digital library. It's enabled us to digitise more formats, more efficiently, and store them in a single cohesive system. Since that program commenced, the National Library's digital collection has tripled in size. These flexible systems also allow us, or gives us the capacity to outsource beyond mass digitisation of newspapers. So we turn to journals. Like newspapers, it's a corpus that's spread across national collections from many different organisations, and it holds a wealth of information that has the capacity to power the next generation of research. Now, in moving to digitising journals, we carried over many of the lessons we'd already learnt in digitising newspapers. However, there were some new processes that we had to work out too. For example, newspapers are usually digitised from a microfilm reel. For journals, we mainly do it from print. That requires a more thorough pre-assessment stage. We have to assess the material's physical condition, including fragility and need for preservation, the number of pages each issue has, and the presence of things like supplements. We have to look for name changes over time by studying the bibliographic record, and we have to work with partners to source copies so that a full run can be digitised. That can mean bringing copies together from different holding institutions and reuniting them digitally, which is one of the great benefits of digitisation. Now that assessment stage ends with choosing the best equipment for digital capture of the particular physical resource. It usually ends up being our Cadena scanner that does capture and cropping to standard. Once that's done, there's quality assessment so that errors like curved pages are captured and rescanned, and special pages or foldouts are inserted at this end stage. Once that's done, the images are loaded into a sophisticated back-end management system and sent to two places. First, to generate derivatives for the delivery system, and for OCR processing to facilitate search. This can, and we have the capacity to outsource that activity. Now, the OCR that we do is quite sophisticated. As part of the journal digitisation process, articles are separately identified and zoned. OCR text is provided for each page and article. Headlines, subheadings and authors are rekeyed to ensure they're findable. And that's not all. We do things like categorising, ordering and grouping elements, like illustrations such as this one, as well as advertisements, captions, tables, footnotes, headlines and authors. That all takes place for individual articles. At the journal issue level, the structural elements of the main parts of each issue, such as the cover page, title page, and table of content pages, are identified. Now, we have a generic specification, but that can be supplemented with additional instructions. Like for the bulletin, when it was printed in the 19th century, it came with a red wrapper of advertisements. So we want to make sure we capture both of those properly. Those digital images and the OCR are stored in our bespoke digital object storage system at the National Library, and there are separate file systems for holding digital object metadata, for preservation, display and working content. But this single collection management interface sits on the top, which allows National Library staff to manipulate metadata and associated files. Now that level of investment, 5 years worth, in a system to suit one format type is not worth it for an institution, even one the size of ours. But it is worth it at scale. Up until now, everything I've shown you is the back end, the collection management activities. But the reason we do this is for access, for the public to use. So as I said at the beginning, initially journals were discoverable like many other digitised resources. A link was added to the MARC record for the digitised journal, like this one. You want to read a back issue of the Bushfire Bulletin from 1981? Okay, well, go find the catalogue record for the Bushfire Bulletin. Find the digital link, click on that, browse to the issues from 1981, and then look at the page images. So just because we have all this rich metadata in our back-end digital library system did not mean it was making it to Trove's front-end public search automatically. Keyword search integration takes work. At the time we were setting this up and we were thinking about how we would power discovery, we were also trying to stop building a new system for every different format that we were digitising. They were confusing to the public to use and they cost extra overhead for us to maintain. We also wanted to amalgamate this new digitised content that we were creating with that held by organisations outside the National Library. Now, I mentioned earlier that Trove is a repository of digitised material that lives within Trove, as well as an aggregator of metadata that lives outside Trove's platform. Well, Trove aggregates metadata records, descriptions, and places them in our discovery service. That's taken care of by a piece of software that was built in-house called the NLA Harvester. It's really simple. It copies metadata records from external web services, transforms them into Dublin Core, and loads them into Trove. This NLA Harvester is beyond its 10th birthday, but it's really well understood by the Trove team, and it provides an existing pathway for data into Trove. Why build a new system whose job it is to put standard metadata records into Trove when we already have one? So instead of building a new bespoke integration between Trove and these journal articles, we decided to just use the NLA Harvester. It already took care of the transforming metadata into Trove's required format and putting records into Trove, part of the process. Our digital repository, it needed a little more work. So our in-house development team built a small, lightweight API onto it. It's RESTful and returns JSON. You send it a from and to date in a URL request, and it gives you back all the articles with their associated metadata. That includes a copy of the OCR text that makes up the article. These digitised journals are then crosswalked into Trove's form of Dublin core using XSLT style sheets and Java regular expressions. So that's exactly the same way any other organisation's content is transformed to get it into Trove. Finally, the records, which include the full text and the metadata, are loaded into Trove. So no new functionality. We use all the existing functionality to connect up the new digital repository to the existing discovery system. In the beginning, there was something like 30 new articles being digitised each day and added to Trove. As we've ramped up, that's grown, and it's now over 20,000 articles a day. And scalability hasn't been an issue because those tools were already really robust and well tried. So the point of that is that we now have article level records being added to the Trove discovery side that are viewable in Trove's delivery side. Trove patrons can search for keywords and topics and find the articles that contain those terms. It makes the digitised items searchable, not just browsable. So someone can type in a keyword like Katoomba, which is a town in the Blue Mountains near Sydney, and find the 45 articles from the Bushfire Bulletin where Katoomba is mentioned. They don't have to read through thousands of back issues looking for articles where Katoomba might be mentioned. These are individual search results for each article. Much less clicking and navigating for users, much less confusion. They've got a single URL on the catalogue record. This content is not just different from newspapers in the way it's scanned. So we're using print instead of microfilm for the scanning. We're storing it in the National Library's new general digital library infrastructure. And it's discovered through standard Trove Dublin core records, rather than bespoke records like we do for newspapers. Now, the way the content is browsed is different as well. People do still want to browse. So for that reason, we have a sequential browse window. It allows users to view 20 issue covers at a time. They can view basic metadata for each issue, including the publication date and volume number, and then click on the cover image to view that issue. Now, that functionality is new to journals and something users don't have for newspapers. There's a hyperlinked table of contents within each issue. It appears on the left-hand side and allows users to jump to articles of interest. Searching within a single issue is also possible, and it happens while the page image remains in view. In this issue, I've searched for tornado, and small green markers drop along the bottom of the screen to indicate where matches for the search term have appeared in that issue. Clicking on the markers allows users to jump between references on different pages. We've got other new features for viewing. One's called Deep Zoom, that allows users to examine the pages in great detail. This particular image is a Streeton from the journal Art in Australia, which was published in 1916. Notice his signature in the bottom right-hand corner. Well, this is what it looks like in Deep Zoom. So close you can actually see the dots from the journal's original printing process. This particular journal was digitised in partnership with the University of Wollongong and the University of New South Wales. So we have new content, new discovery features, new browse features. Were people actually using this content? Well, in April 2016, users could only find records that looked like this. They were the marked-based records that said the Bushfire Bulletin was a journal. This particular run started in 1978. 19 Australian libraries hold copies. A month later, users could find records like this that said there was a 357-word article in volume 29, number 2, from 1997 that mentioned the Woomera National Park near Albury. So now typing in search terms like Woomera, Albury, lightning, or any word printed in the original article will bring back this record, and let the user click right through to view it. We put a significant amount of work to make these journal articles discoverable at the article level. So was it worth it? Well, you saw my graph before, so yes. In May 2016, that was the first month that journals became discoverable at the article level, and that's when usage tripled. It jumped from under 7,000 page views in April to almost 20,000 in June. Which means that over the May 2016 to May 2017 year, the corpus got 4.6 times bigger, and over the same period, usage increased 17 times. So content grew 4.6 times, usage increased 17 times. Discoverability increased use substantially. So yes, that investment in making the content discoverable was definitely worth it. And when we break down the usage stats by journal title, we saw something even more nuanced. Number of page views does not directly correspond to the number of digitised articles. So I mentioned earlier that community is a really important aspect of Trove. Well, when we went looking for stats, we could see that communities are congregating around particular titles in this journal's corpus. MyMag is the Mount Isa mining magazine. It has a good deal of that town's history. And the Bushfire Bulletin has the New South Wales Rural Fire Service's history. Both are in the top 5 most used journals. They're not the largest journals by far, but they're some of the most used. That's because they've been perused and shared by members of those communities. The librarian from Mount Isa has said that MyMag was basically the Facebook of its day. It's how we all kept in touch. Now, the interesting thing is, it's those communities that actually drove the original digitisation projects. They were the ones who sought out a partnership with the National Library to make this content discoverable in the first place. And now their communities are the ones who are using the digitised resources. So, how does a digitisation partnership like that work? Well, the initial step is to establish requirements. Rights are a real issue for this kind of content, especially as it tends to be more recent. So rights clearance is sought to give the National Library the relevant permissions to digitise and make available the journals online. The National Library then negotiates an agreement with the partner that describes the work to be undertaken and specifies the roles and responsibilities of each party. Partners often don't have a full run of the journal that they're trying to digitise, so they rely on the National Library and relationships with the state libraries to try and get a full run. So as an example, this Bushfire Bulletin was done with the New South Wales Rural Fire Service, and they wanted to bring 60 years of the journal online. In this case, they funded the digitisation project. The National Library had the bulk of the copies, but the Rural Fire Service provided a few that we were missing to make up the full run. Now, digitisation partners have reported that having their journal content digitised has had the effect of drawing together communities with an interest in that content. So this is creating virtual hubs. The Rural Fire Service, have a dispersed workforce, although it is the world's largest volunteer fire service. Now, the interest in digitising their magazine came about when many of the brigades were celebrating big anniversary years, and they were looking for archival content. An unintentional consequence of having this magazine online has been that the fire service has started using it to produce modern day issues. They're consulting the archive for articles detailing the particular fires that led to the growth of certain brigades. Now, communities don't just use things, they also improve it with their own knowledge. Trove does offer the capacity for users to curate by making lists, adding tags, adding comments, and some valuable pieces of research are emerging. Here's one that a user has created entitled Writers Interviewed by Zora Cross, pseudonym Bernice May, in the Australian Woman's Mirror, and the username is C. Perkins. The description they provide is that in the late 1920s and early 30s, Zora Cross interviewed her fellow women writers for the popular magazine, The Australian Woman's Mirror. Without these entertaining profiles, there would be little trace of many of these writers in literary history or biography. So this list they've created of digitised journal articles brings together 39 interviews with female writers of the period, and it's really become a new resource in its own right. A way for people to find this content, the simplest way, is to embed links to Trove in a library catalogue by including the journal URL in a bibliographic record. Now, as part of the digitisation process, the National Library does that by default, and all those records are on Libraries Australia. However, I've already mentioned that only a small portion of users will find their way through that journal title link. So for a richer experience, digitisation partners can create their own portals to expose the material that they've helped digitise. It lets them take advantage of the National Library's large-scale infrastructure, digitisation expertise, and commitment to preservation and access. But someone like the New South Wales Rural Fire Service can create their own online portal, which they have done, to just their journal, the Bushfire Bulletin. They've created a widget, which is embedded in their own website. A user visits the Rural Fire Service webpage, types in a search term, and clicks the Go button. From the New South Wales Rural Fire Service website, they then leap to Trove, where they see a list of search results on the Trove website in Trove's journal zone. Now, in the background, the widget has directed Trove to limit results specifically to issues of the Bushfire Bulletin. Not only is the user saved from rekeying their search, but they're also given an extra limiting functionality that's not actually present in the Trove interface. We're thrilled with how the Trove audience is embracing digitised journal content and that partners are keen to get on board and digitise their own content. So where do we go from here? Well, increased coordination of digitisation of Australian journals is clearly desirable. It has benefits like avoiding duplication of effort, informing project planning at different organisations, and bringing coherence to the national effort to make Australian journal material accessible. The National Library provides a newspaper title coming soon list, which hopefully most of you know about. It will shortly be extended to include other formats scheduled for digitisation, like journals. That lets other organisations know what titles are scheduled to be digitised, avoiding duplication and increasing coordination. Coordination also means a cohesive discovery and delivery experience for users. So what are we up to next? Well, Trove is continuing to evolve. As it matures, we have to look at how we can keep changing to meet the needs of users and partners. Top of our hit list at the moment is the search interface. That's our big priority. It's relatively unchanged since our launch in 2009, so that's approaching a decade old, and we heard this morning that systems don't live that long. We have kicked off a project to modernise the design and bring it up to the expectations of a 2018 audience. That means making it cleaner, clearer, and easier to use based on evidence. So a lot of testing, research, and responding to user feedback. We need an update to our API. Part of the advantage of reusing our existing infrastructure was we needed no changes to our API to include the journal metadata. Academics have already started pulling it down and using it to do analysis. However, we do need to make a small change to the API so that the full text from each article comes out as well. And we're hoping to do that this year. Statistics. Generating usage statistics is really hard at the moment. We didn't realise the difference in having those article level records that could be keyword searched until we went looking for evidence for this paper. It took me more than a day to generate that information, and we haven't had the resources to update it since, which is why I told you about May to May last year. Understanding usage is really key. It's how we focus our resources for developing Trove in the future, so that has to change. And we've done some preliminary work over the summer on that front. Enhancement suggestions are coming from partners, and they're really good ones. Things like doing more to seed the major search engines with the full text, or enabling a search within functionality. We'll be pursuing enhancements in consultation with Trove's many partners and stakeholders. Expanding to other National Library content types, there's tons of metadata that we're collecting and generating that's not being pushed to our discovery layer, because setting that up takes time and resources. Showing that existing paths could be used to get this data into Trove Discovery has opened up lots of internal conversations, and we'll hopefully see other collections becoming more discoverable this year. I'm going to end where I started with this graph. Collaborative digitisation is leading to big benefits for users and for partners, and that it's worth doing the extra effort to realise every cent of your investment. Discoverability increases use. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I think you should be very proud of this graph. That's excellent stuff. I'll open it up to the floor for some questions. Again, just to remind you, come to one of the microphones, introduce yourself and the organisation you're from. Maybe to get us started, your talk sort of talked more about digitisation for discoverability as the others were talking about preservation, but I can imagine this project does have some advantages for preservation, and wondered if that was something you considered in the development of this project, or if you could just talk generally about the relationship between those two.
I should admit that my side of things is actually metadata and discovery. That's my specialty. Sure. And my colleague Hilary is all on the digitisation side.
Right.
The National Library does have digital preservation services, but at the moment for this project, the focus is really on access.
Sure. Yeah.
Hi. Hello. I'm Stephen Graham from RMIT University. I was just interested to hear whether, as part of this sort of process of digitising journals, whether you've learned things and discovered things that you'd like to be in future be able to go back and perhaps do with newspapers. You know, things like the cover browse and all that sort of stuff. Would be lovely to see in the newspaper collection as well. Is that somewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had at least one content partner for journals say, I actually like that browsing experience better, where I can see the pages side by side and flip through as it was in the original issue. So I want to move the thing that I had digitised for newspapers into the new journal system. That's not possible. And newspapers got a big overhaul to its interface 2 years ago, so we're unlikely to be touching that in the next little while. But there are definitely features in journals that we know people would like to see replicated in newspapers.
I'm Nicole Carney from Biodiversity Heritage Library Australia, so I spend an enormous amount of time digitising journals. I'm wondering whether you are pulling in content from other organisations that they have digitised, and thereby all of the wonderful tools that you've shown us and all that discoverability can be applied to digitisation projects that may not have such wonderful tools.
Yep, so the real advantage of this project is that the discovery side of things that we used is exactly the same as we were already using to pull in journal content and digitised content from, say, university repositories or other cultural institutions. And I believe my colleague is back at work working on the Biodiversity Heritage Library. For that, what you get is the discovery side of things, so we can do the searching over the full text and we can do the metadata records. The delivery side of things, that actually lives within the Trove platform. So it's almost a kind of digitisation partnership in itself, where we're bringing in the digital files instead of just the metadata.
So your 20,000 figure there that you quoted, is that the number of pages digitised, or the articles digitised, or is it pulling in from all that other content?
Yep, that's just articles digitised. So then we also get collections from about 500 other streams from research and cultural institutions around Australia. So like universities contribute about 1.7 million at the moment. And to us, it doesn't matter if it is something that was born digital or if it was digitised. The metadata record can include the full text, which is the thing that powers the searching for us. And as long as that comes in, yeah, you can do it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you very much for your talk.
Hi, I'm Joan Simpson from the University of Canterbury in New Zealand, and thank you very much for your presentation. I just had a query about your deep zoom feature and whether that was within Trove, or are you going out using a software to zoom?
We're not using the IFFF, is that what it's called? But what we did use was open source software.
Okay.
So that's living within Trove. I can't tell you the name of the open source package off the top of my head, but we were quite pleased when we got it working.
Yeah.
We know that standard's on the horizon. We're not there yet, but it'd be nice to be.
Okay. Thank you.
So of course, some time ago, people actually went ahead and indexed these magazines, and they made that indexing data available. Is there plans to actually incorporate that index metadata into the searching as well at some point?
Absolutely. We're working on a couple at the moment. One of them is Walkabout. A University of Queensland professor has done a project to index 5,000 of those articles. The brilliant thing about the method we've used is that it uses the same FERBA that it uses for other things. So it goes, wow, they are identical versions. So to a Trove user, I will show the indexed metadata and this link to the digitised thing where they can look at it as the same record. So we're taking advantage of that, all that indexing work that's been done for decades and merging it with the digital versions. So yeah, people have multiple access points, which is terrific.
Cool. We might take one more question and then we can wrap things up.
Seems to be my fate to ask the last question. I'm going to introduce myself this time. Jennifer Eddy, Collection Profiling Librarian at University of Melbourne. I was interested in your What's Next page, because something that has been discussed amongst my digitisation colleagues is being aware of what else is happening in the digitisation space across the industry. So do you see perhaps a role for a page like the What's Next page to be opened up to perhaps the wider digitisation community so that we can in fact see what people are planning to do and perhaps not duplicate effort?
Yep, I think there is definitely a need in that space. A Google group got set up last year. It had a flurry of activity at the beginning and then seems to have gone quiet. But definitely there are quite a few of us out there that are interested in what everyone else is planning to digitise so we can make our own plans. From the National Libraries front, we're hoping to expose our own plans more to get people started. I'm not sure what the long-term solution is yet. We can be a flag bearer, yep.
All right, thanks everyone. And also just like to thank Julia again for your presentation and your little page.